Thank you so much. We have a question. Are there legal frames to challenge these systems or lists? Are there legal frameworks to challenge these systems or lists? I think you sort of alluded to that, Yavar, about the difficulty of challenging this because you don't know what the evidence are.
I don't know. Shane, did you want to address that one or?
Well, I think you did hit on it, Yavar. Yeah, I mean, there are processes where there's kind of the delisting process that you can go through with the minister. So in other words, applying to have a group delisted by the same minister, sometimes that may have been the one to, lead the charge to have the group added to the list. You can imagine how successful that may or may not be. And then there's a question of going through federal court on a judicial review of that decision as well, right? So there to go about it. However, hurdles that are there, including such as
there might be a lag. Sorry, Shane, you cut off towards the end there. We didn't.
My apologies. Yeah, having some connectivity issues, but it's I was simply noting that it's a very uphill process, whether it's applying to the minister or going by way of a judicial review. It's definitely a guilty until presumed guilty until proven innocent approach.
Thank you.
And if I can add to that, the onus is on the entity to apply for delisting, and it's on a standard of you're challenging a ministerial decision based on reasonable grounds to believe. So the difference is the minister lists because they think that there's reasons, and it could be as simple or as flimsy as guilt by association. Essentially, they list. The onus comes back on the entity to apply for delisting. That gets, as Shane is suggesting, probably will be confirmed, and then you have to go to challenge the reasonableness of that, low standard by which the minister justified their decision to begin with. So it's an uphill climb. It's a difficult one, in particular because anyone who could be engaged, and we tried to do this, has to do so for free and has to sort of go through a very circuitous process to get there finally.
And if I can just add, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that there's been a single individual, because an individual can be listed, or organization that has successfully challenged their listing and had themselves removed. The government reviews the list a listing every 5 years, and there's been a handful, I think, of groups that have been removed, usually because they're defunct, not because they're no longer considered a terrorist organization. So, for example, the FARC in Colombia is still listed as a terrorist entity in Canada, despite the fact that it's now part of the collective peace process in Colombia and the reconciliation and truth process there. And yet an individual who was a member of FARC or is currently affiliated with that process could be deemed a terrorist in Canada and denied entry to Canada or subject to sanctions.
Thank you.